What's up, everybody? You're listening to Obsidian Radio, the voice of the everyday brother. And it is Thursday, November 16th, 2017. Welcome to the program. Glad you could make it, and thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Just got word within the past hour or so that the black female YouTuber known as Egypt Ann still has a channel up. I'm looking at it right now, 219 subscribers. So apparently my intel on her still being active wasn't quite accurate, and I made that clear the other day. She's going on a tear to try to take yours truly's channels down. And I just want to say at the outset of this podcast segment to Egypt Ann, look, won't you come on the show? I extend to you a full invitation to come on my live show, Obsidian Radio Live. Come on the show and make your case. You know, I gave Hardcore Tito an hour and a half on the show. I'll give you equal time to come on my show, and you can make your case. You can lay out how and why black male YouTubers like me are just wrong. You can lay it out. I welcome, the colloquy personally, because I want you to know something, Egypt Ann. I mean, you going about things the way that you're doing, it isn't going to, at the end of the day, all you're going to end up doing is making me and my side stronger. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. Because, and I just talked about this earlier today on the show. Because, what you're doing is, fundamentally anti-American, anti-democratic. And you're basically attempting to use rules and stuff like that to essentially silence, censor, and bully people instead of dealing with them in the public square and having a superior argument. Like I said, come on the show. I mean, if you can prove what I'm saying in my arguments with regard to black women in general, and I've said this a gazillion times, and it just goes to show that you can't say it enough. Excuse me, not all black women are like that, but enough black women are like that. If it don't apply, let it fly. Ladies, if what I'm saying about the majority of black women isn't true, you have an opportunity to put all kind of egg on my face on my own live show. You can prove it with evidence, data, stats, and all the rest. But, going about the way you're going about things right now, all it's going to end up doing is just making our side stronger, because, it's a sign of a weak individual that they have to go and shut other people down instead of just meeting them in the public square with a better and superior argument. And that's all you're proving right now, is that you're fundamentally weak. I don't want to believe that about you. So I'm giving you this opportunity to come on the show. Come on the show and make your case. Come on with it, Egypt Ann. The Obsidian Files at Hotmail or at gmail.com. Put in the subject line your own name. Let me know who you are, and we'll set up a date and time. And like I said, I gave Hardcore Tito an hour and a half last night. I'm glad to have done it. And I'll give you the same amount of time. I'll give you equal time to come on and make your case. So you have an open invitation for dialogue. You have an open invitation to make your case on my show. You have an open invite. An hour and a half, your supporters can come on over, whatever. You have an hour and a half to make your case. But if you think that you're going to get anywhere by attempting to silence me, silence other brothers, here on YouTube and elsewhere in black social media, I mean, you're a day late and a dollar short with that. Social media is decentralized now, and you're just going to have to be able to deal with alternative and counter arguments coming through with countervailing evidence. To tell you the truth, I think my argument is superior to yours. I have superior evidence. And that leads me to the topic of this podcast right here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as you can see on the screen, you see yet again one of my very simple pie charts. I like to use very simple graphics to make the case when we're talking about using data and sources. This comes from a comment. Speaking of my interview I did last night with Hardcore Tito on Obsidian Radio, the live stream show. This comes from a comment by a brother by the name of Simon Du Bois. Simon Du Bois wrote last night in the comments section. He says 24% of U.S. black men are unwed fathers. According to my calculations from a recent survey of 15 to 44-year-old black men, 6% of married black men in the United States marry outside the race. 43% of black men are unmarried and childless. 24% of black men are unmarried and have children. And 40% of black women are unmarried and mothers. He goes on. Roughly 24% of black men are responsible for 40% of unwed mothers. But more or less, all women support a campaign to blame all black men, and particularly the less than 6% of men who marry outside the race. He then says, figures are based on this, the CDC National Health Statistics Report, April 12, 2012. Black men ages 15 to 44 that are married, which is 86.1% and have children. Unmarried, which is 35.5% and have children. Black women ages 15 to 44 that are married, 84.8% that have children, and unmarried, which is 54.4% and have children. And then he wraps up by saying, consider that only approximately 32% of black men are married and 26% of black women are married. So this is where this pie chart graphic is based on. I want to thank Simon Du Bois for his keen and excellent observations. And we need to have this put out in the ether, because as I said in my previous podcast, we're entering a period with this black gender war piece where basically what's going to end up happening is more brothers are going to come through with data. And I suggested that in the coming next few years, between now and the next presidential election, between now and the year 2020, we're going to see more and more brothers coming forward with empirical data that will actually start to question the narratives that so many, not all, but so many black women put out about black men. And one of the common narratives is this idea that, because we always hear this from a lot of black women, well, black women didn't get pregnant by themselves, we need to focus on the black men that make women pregnant, blah blah blah. Y'all they don't say the black men who do it, they say you black men. See, they don't get granular with it, they just assign all black men this. So this data is very important, and there's a limitation on this data, and I'm going to point it out. You can see it here on the chart. So let's take it from the top. 43% of black men are unmarried and childless. So that's almost half. Okay? And that's represented by the orange slice on the pie chart. And the green slice is the 6% of black men that have married interracially. Non-black women. All right? According to the CDC survey of 2012. All right? 24% of black men are unmarried baby daddies. Now, if you add all that up, that doesn't come out to 100%. So I put the pink slice of the pie chart here, which is 27% of black men with 3 question marks. I don't know if that was an oversight on Simon Du Bois's part or not, but just doing up the math, it didn't come out to 100%. So we still have 27% of black men unaccounted for per the CDC survey. So if anybody out there can account for this other 27% of black men, or if we can have more accurate data, by all means post it in the comments section. That's going to be very important. But I just wanted everybody to look at this graphic because it's very important. Again, this comes from the CDC. All right. And it's very important because it puts into context, this idea that black men ain't shit. And as we've been saying here, among the brother man regiments here, on black social media, fighting our side of the black gender war, we've been saying that no, it's the black men that so many, listen, I don't take any pleasure in saying these things. I'm like Heather McDonald. Some of you will recall I mentioned Heather McDonald, who is, essentially, she's a white woman, and some would say a conservative white woman She's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a contributing editor to the Manhattan Institute's magazine, the City Journal, and website. She's a prolific writer. She's written a lot of articles and books and stuff. Her most recent book is The War on Cops. She's all over the media, and to tell you the truth, and it really didn't hit me until earlier this morning when I was doing this morning's podcast and I was in post-production. It really hit me as I was getting that podcast segment prepped and ready to go for this morning, was that she's fighting this war by herself. She is single-handedly fighting Black Lives Matter, and she's doing it with data from the FBI and Department of Justice statistics. She's doing it with data coming from the various police departments and other researchers around the nation. She's essentially taking them on by herself. By now, we know that the narrative created by Black Lives Matter is a lie. We all know how Black Lives Matter got started. It got started in the wake of the Michael Brown shooting in the summer of 2014. Hands up, don't shoot. That whole situation in Ferguson was a lie. Michael Brown was a thief. He committed a strong arm robbery, and then he attempted to take Darren Wilson's service pistol, and shoot him with it. Those are the facts. Those are what independent grand juries and investigations, all the way up to and including at the federal level, Obama's own Justice Department, came to the same findings. And this is very important. This is the reason why I mentioned Heather McDonald, because she's fighting against this narrative that was fomented by Black Lives Matter, which was founded by 3 black women. And, other academics have voiced their deep concerns with them. Glenn Loury has done it. Boyce Watkins has done it. These are not the mainstream of Black America. They're not. And this is what a lot of black women will do, is they will make up stuff. They will make up a narrative. That's what the whole word narrative means. You are making up a story, the story that you tell, and get everybody else to believe that story without investigating the claim being made, without investigating the evidence. And we know that the Michael Brown story is not true. We know that. So that alone should completely undermine Black Lives Matter. But as we see, it doesn't. So Heather McDonald has done this really bang up job with presenting evidence. Look, I mean, it's not, pretty to say, but the reality is that Black America is beset with a raft of problems that are almost entirely internal in nature. And to put an even finer point on it, not only are they internal in nature, they're behavioral, they're cultural, and a lot of it comes from black women themselves. That's the reason why I make the linkage between what Heather McDonald is doing with Black Lives Matter and what we're doing here in the, for lack of a better way of putting it, the Black Manosphere here on YouTube and elsewhere on black social media. We're fighting against false narratives and lies. And one of the prominent lies over the past generation, earlier this morning I was talking about black Gen Xers, is this idea that black men ain't shit. And sometimes they'll segregate it out, like they'll focus on blue collar black men. That was the whole point of Ralph Richard Banks's argument in his book Is Marriage for White People, that black women shouldn't marry down, they should marry out. And of course right now that's the whole, and I knew it was coming, that's the whole argument going on with Jill Scott, is we want to attack Mike Dobson, and my response to the argument is, he's unemployed, he has all these kids, she married down, this is what happens when you marry down. So my question is, okay, so if everything about Mike Dobson we're saying now is true, then why did Jill Scott marry him? Why couldn't she find a man on her level to marry her? We know the reason why. Black women just won't admit it. Because the truth is, and I played clips from Tom Likas who's talked about this. They've done studies on this. Fat women get broke guys. That's just the way it is. You're not going to find a Hill Harper, a John Legend with a Jill Scott. I'm sorry, you're not. That's just not how it works. And black women just refuse to admit and grapple with that fact. This despite the fact, going back to the CDC, despite the fact that black women are the fattest women in the country. the fattest people in the country. I mean, morbidly obese. We're not talking about pleasingly plump or, they put on a few pounds. We're not talking about that. We're talking about morbidly obese. It's a fact. Spelman College had to get involved because it was affecting their student body. I mean, this is just a fact, but black women just refuse to deal with that. And this is what we're up against in Black America, and this is the reason why I mentioned Heather McDonald and her excellent work, The War on Cops. She lists all the data and everything else, man. It's astonishing. It really, really is. It's astonishing. And it does. I don't take any pleasure in saying this, but the truth just has to be told. So when we're being told about all these things about black men, my question now becomes, on what basis do you say this? Show me some empirical data that bears you out. And when it comes to the issue of who's having all the kids, because it's a very well-known statement of public fact and public record now that over 70% of children born in Black America are born out of wedlock. So the question has to be, who's having these babies? Well, we know that 24% of black men are doing it. We know that at least 40% of black women are doing it. We know that. Now, that's not quite the 80-20 rule. Remember, we still have 27%, according to this, we still have 27% of black men unaccounted for. But like Tito said in the interview last night, we're looking at this through a glass darkly, and we do have anecdotal evidence and data that strongly supports the idea of the 80-20 rule theory. It strongly supports it. And here again, we're seeing evidence that's strongly in support of the idea that a smaller cohort of black men are the ones getting all these baby mamas. So now we can go back to black women and say, okay, according to the CDC, only 24% of black men are baby daddies, while 40% of black women are baby mamas. So clearly, not even, this is barely 1 in 4 black men this applies to. The other 75% of black men don't apply in this regard. So again, we're talking about a small percentage of black men who y'all women like to deal with who ain't shit. So the obvious question is, why do you keep dealing with this small group of black men who ain't shit? Why do we keep seeing on the Oprah channel Iyanla Vanzant having these guys on there that have, umpteen babies by as many women and all the rest of it? The obvious question is, why do you keep messing with dudes like that, when clearly the vast majority of black men are not like that? There are more black men who are married, less divorced, more stable than not. As a matter of fact, they're more so than black women are. So we have to ask, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep messing with black men who ain't shit? And that goes back to what I was saying with regard to Heather McDonald. We have pretty much, my shorthand I call it Bizarro Land Black America. We pretty much gotten rid of any type of civilizing norms in Black America, and it was driven by black women themselves. And we know that how and why it was driven, a combination of black feminism and the welfare mind state. So now we have a culture that's completely upside down. We got a Clockwork Orange culture. And when you bring out any facts bearing on this, they want to kill the messenger. So I'm not surprised to see all of this backlash with regard to Jill Scott. I anticipated it. I'm not surprised one bit that none of the black women who came to comment on my Jill Scott podcast, I'm not surprised one bit that they didn't really deal with the notable exceptions like 2 or 3 black women. But they proved the rule. The vast majority of black women just did not deal with my argument. And I was citing again CDC and U.S. government census data. They didn't even address it. They went straight to Mike Dobson. So my question is, okay, if Mike Dobson is so beneath Jill Scott, why did she marry him in the first place? If everything you're saying about him is true, and I'm not disputing it, I concede the point. So why did she marry him? Why couldn't she get a man? Why couldn't she get a Music Soul Child? Why couldn't she get a Bilal? Why couldn't she get an Eric Benet type? Why couldn't she do that? We all know the reason why. But black women just won't admit it. Black women are so committed to their fuckery that they can't admit to doing the wrong thing and commit to doing the right thing. They just can't admit it. So what we're going to have to do is bring data to bear. And this is something else I want my brothers to understand, is because a number of them have raised this point. We're not going to convince most black women. We're not. The vast majority of black women, the numbers will go right over their head. So the numbers are not for black women. The numbers are to enlighten fellow black men so they know what's going on here and they're better armed to deal with these conversations, big and small. And also these numbers are for people outside of black America. You know, when people outside of black America find these things out, that black women largely bring these problems on themselves by messing with the worst kinds of black men, how do you think they're going to feel about funding the welfare mind state for them? Who wants to underwrite the fuckery of people who just keep doing the same dumb shit over and over again? Who wants to fund that? So, you know, basically what we're doing here is we're questioning the narrative and discrediting a lot of the black female fuckery that goes on here. That we know for a fact that a clear, simple majority of black men do not have kids and are childless, and we know that a marked, distinct minority of black men are baby daddies. We also know that they create those babies with a significant, almost twice as large cohort of black women. So once again, it ain't that black men ain't shit. No, it's the black men that you like to mess with who ain't shit. And we have to keep hammering this point home with the data. So I just wanted to get on the air and put that out there real quick. You may have noticed by now that I made some changes to the channel in light of, Egypt Ann supposedly put me on her hit list and all the rest. So, I just want to let her know. I mean, I'm all for having her on the show and making her case. If she can prove me wrong, if she can prove the rest of the Brother Man regiments here on YouTube wrong, then it'll be manifest. It'll be seen right there, and we'll be completely discredited because you will have come through with a better debate and a superior argument and better evidence. But, if you think that you're going to go ahead and try to win this whole thing by silencing us and censoring us and trying to bully us in the public square, all you end up doing, and I said this to Ms. Thang earlier this year, to quote, the great Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. So Egypt Ann, I say to you, if you really believe the courage of your convictions, come on the show. You know how to find me. I'll keep the line on for you. You're listening to Obsidian Radio, which is 100% supported by listeners like you. And if you like what you heard on today's podcast, talk show heard only on YouTube, then what the heck are you waiting for? Put 5 on it and become one of the 300 Patreons I need to stay on the air getting bigger and better. All the details are going to be over on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Mumia Obsidian Ali. Do it now. You'll be glad that you did. For those who wish to become private PayPal donors and become soldados in the invisible army here at Obsidian Radio, you can do that by hitting up yours truly first at theobsidianfiles@hotmail or at gmail.com. Put in the subject line donations, and I'll be sure to walk you through from there. $5, $5,000. You give whatever you think the show is worth on a recurring monthly basis. I so greatly and deeply appreciate that. When you do, you'll go down on the mailing list to receive the official and exclusive Obsidian Radio newsletter. And that's my main way to communicate with all of the friends and supporters of Obsidian Radio. Thinking Black Man's Radio, some assembly is required. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this channel and other channels in the Obsidian Media Network universe. Please don't forget to bang the bell so you know what yours truly's got cooking back in the kitchen for you. And last and not least, please don't forget to share this podcast with a brother that you know, love, and respect. The life you save may very well be his. My name is Mumia Obsidian Ali, and I approve this message, bitches. Stay tuned. We are going to come back, Egypt Ann. Peace.